This video is just me missing Azure Lion, like, a lot. Why you always lying? Why you always lying? Get it? Because Azure Lion, he's a lion. You get it. You get it. I'm so funny. Hey, it's Ali. Welcome back to my channel. And this is a purely self-indulgent follow-up to my last video about Lego Monkie Kid Season 4 specials. So if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video and then come back here, because this is a follow-up to that video. I said in that video that I really wanted to talk about the Azure Lion for like 30 minutes. So this is what this is. It probably won't be 30 minutes, but y'all know me, who knows? I think that the Azure Lion is probably one of the most important antagonists, villains, whatever character in the entirety of the show, including with MK and his character development. And I really wanted to talk about that today, especially as I rewatched season 4 and the season 4 specials, just to feel something. And I just, like, everything clicked in my head with this character, and I think he's so extremely important. Like, he has like a grand total of like 30 minutes of screen time and yet he's probably one of the most important characters. Everything that he says makes me go, wait a minute. So if at any time you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe, because I make videos like this all the time. And if you want to see more of this kind of like deep dive character analysis type deal, let me know. I love doing these, and let's jump into it. So firstly, I want to talk about his role as an antagonist slash villain within the series. I do think he's more of an antagonist in this series. He starts off definitely as a villain because he comes off with ulterior motives. He's completely like manipulating MK and May into doing what he wants them to do. Even though he feels bad for MK and May, he still manipulates them. It's funny because he'll sit there and be like, oh, some wukong manipulated you and this, that, the third, and all this stuff. But like, you turned around and did the exact same thing to MK. I have a feeling this is going to have lasting repercussions on MK's character in terms of like trusting new people, because that did a number on him. That did a number. Somebody who was supposed to be like nice and a uncle figure to you just suddenly betrays you and takes your mentor and runs off with him and hurts your friends, and lasting repercussions. But we'll get to MK later. But so for him as a character, he has so many contradictions to him, which is why I label him in the antagonist era, because someone like the Lady Bone Demon, who was just a straight up villain, doesn't have as many like contradictions in their, I guess, in their like way of going about things. And I feel like it says a lot about Azure Lion's character that he has so many contradictions. You know, he wanted to liberate the world or whatever, but then he turned around and then was an emperor and like seemingly craved all this power and whatnot at the end. And it's like, was that just an effect of like having the Jade Emperor's power? Like the whole thing with him going like, I am the emperor now and you will listen to your emperor, blah, blah, blah. Hold on. Wait a minute. Was it the whole point that you wanted to liberate people and have people be free and have freedom and equals and like all that type of stuff? And now here you are with this power and you're going on a power trip. And come to find out, I only remembered this by rewatching the specials. When macaque takes MK through some Wukong's memories, I'm sorry, I was distracted by Shadow Peach the entire time. I really was, because there's an important part where they get to the paradise that the Brotherhood created, and macaque is talking about like the wasteland that is around them and how they had to suck all of the energy out of the wasteland, literally suck the life out of everything around them in order to build the utopia that they seeked. And he didn't care. Well, macaque says that Azure Lion didn't care. He just wanted his utopia or like whatever. And I just like completely ignored it because I was still reeling after all of the Shadow Peach stuff that was happening beforehand. But like, we really need to come back to that. We really need to come back and take a seat and think about that for a while. Obviously he was lying to MK when he said that, oh, we were just trying to have our own little utopia. We built our own utopia and the Jade Emperor crew didn't like it. They didn't like that they had competition. Really? You suck the life out of everything around you, and you probably had to keep doing it in order to, you know, keep your land afloat or like whatever. And obviously this is probably a story. I know it is a story within the Journey to the West. And the whole like meta analysis about macaque and MK and being macaque, like, you didn't read Journey to the West? Like, hello? Shouldn't you be reading that? And I'm just like, oh, you're right. You're so right. And I will before season 5 comes out. How about that? But it also just shows in terms of MK how easily, like, not easily manipulated. He's trusting. He's too trusting. And I feel like, again, permanent repercussions for that. But I think it shows how the story got so twisted up, and we were MK in that moment just believing the Azure Lion, right? We didn't think he was a bad guy, I mean, unless you read Journey to the West. Anyway, we didn't believe him to be like this bad guy. We were just like, oh, he, like, why, like, from his perspective, like, looking back on it now, it's like there's so many holes in his story. But from MK's perspective, he's like, why would why would Sun Wukong do that? Like, why is your story like seemingly like so just and so much justice within your story, but you still ended up in a scroll in the Shadow Realm? Explain that. Like, he was very confused, and I was confused too because we were in MK's shoes during that. And I think that is good, like, foreshadowing for the amount of like kind of moral grayness that MK is going to have to go through, because he thinks obviously Sun Wukong is this great big hero and blah blah blah, and he's been slowly learning over the course of probably since the beginning of the show that that is not the case. But that does not mean that Sun Wukong can't be a good person or a good monkey in this case. It just means that, like, you can't just brush under the rug everything that you have done and your consequences for said actions. Also, the Azure Lion sees MK as a victim, which goes back to my first point. He sees MK as a victim of Sun Wukong, which he feels like he was also a victim of Sun Wukong, which he technically was. If we take out all of his motives, right, he was technically a victim of Sun Wukong. I need you to imagine for a second. You are best friends with somebody. You and your best friends, y'all are homies. Y'all are gonna go through the world together. It's y'all against the world. And then you lose whatever battle you're doing. And then on top of losing, your homie betrays you. In your eyes, your homie, your best friend, the person you called king, person you looked up to, thought was the best person in the world, betrays you. And then everybody else just kind of scatters and then puts you in the Shadow Realm. Yeah. No, I'd be upset too. You're a victim. You are a victim. And so he sees that in MK, like, he sees that kind of like, oh no, see, the same thing is happening to MK. Like, he has like pity for him almost. But I feel like that's also, I don't want to say infantilizing, but it kind of is infantilizing MK in a way that he doesn't know how to make his own decisions, that he's like, you don't know what he's doing to you, blah, blah, blah. Again, like I said in my last video, the whole idea of like MK, you know, knowing and not really doing anything about it, knowing about Sun Wukong, or like at least having, not knowing the full context, but knowing enough to be like, huh, maybe he wasn't that great of a guy sometimes. You know what I mean? But overall, MK is still choosing to stand by Sun Wukong's side because he can see his true character. And that is the like underestimating that I feel like a lot of people do within the series, of thinking that like MK is kind of just naive to the goings on of Sun Wukong. But I think it was more of just like, I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. And now we're at a point where MK can no longer pretend that it doesn't exist. But that is like one of the fatal flaws of Azure Lion, is that he's so prideful. You know, he's a lion. He is a lion. But he's so prideful that he just is like pitying other people who like can't see the truth or like whatever. But it's like MK can. And he did. Don't underestimate him. I think in addition to what I just said about the Azure Lion's fatal flaw, another one of his fatal flaws is the fact that he is, you know, so prideful to the point where he will seek out revenge. He is hell-bent on revenge throughout the entirety of season 4 and the specials. And that is honestly his ultimate downfall. Instead of focusing on going after the Jade Emperor and getting it together and keeping the universe together, he was just like, no, we need to go after that damn monkey. We need to go after that damn monkey. And Yellow Tusk is just like, is this a priority right now? And it's not. But like, again, like I said in my last video, Sun Wukong knew. He was like, I know this guy. He's going to be hell-bent on revenge. He's going to come after us, and we need to be ready. Instead of like trying to keep the world together. And in doing so, he loses the scroll. Like, that is just fatal flaw activity right there. And another one of his fatal flaws is kind of not thinking too far ahead. I know we got Yellow Tusk for that. Okay, he's the like planning guy, but we really should have checked in with him before we did what we did. Speaking of which, planning in all things. Now let's talk about MK and their comparisons and why I think he is such an important character to the rest of the show, especially with his impact on MK. So like I said in my last video about MK was literally just put on this earth to vibe, and now he has to save it, and that's kind of how he feels. And he's like a reluctant hero at this point. I feel the same way about Azure Lion. I feel that within Azure Lion, he wanted to create this like paradise for his friends, and he does have a very strong sense of justice, but at the end of the day, he just wanted wanted a place to be with his friends. And he ended up being a pawn in someone else's game without even realizing it. However, if you look back at like all of the things that he said throughout the show, it really actually seems like he did probably know, but he just did not care. And I feel like that is kind of in relation to MK knowing all the stuff about Sun Wukong, or having an inkling about like Sun Wukong's past and stuff like that, but not really caring or choosing to put that aside for whatever is going on right now. And even though it is something that like you can't, bud, you're gonna have to address it at some point. With Azure Lion, it's kind of the same way, where it's like you're not even wondering how you got here. You're not wondering who your, mysterious benefactor is. The fact that you had the scroll, the fact that you got out of the Shadow Realm, you busted your friends out of prison, and the fact that nobody really stopped you until you went to go attack the palace. What? You're not gonna think about that. You're not gonna think about that for like 2 seconds. But it's like, obviously, he knows that something, somewhere, someone is behind the scenes doing that. And maybe he just thought that, like, oh, it's probably somebody who believes in my cause, or like whatever. I don't know. But like, it's really, those parallels were really like, come on now. Also, this idea, going back to everything goes back to Sun Wukong, but going back to Sun Wukong, this idea of being betrayed and being used, and this feeling that MK should be more angry than he is. Like, he's like, do you not see that you're being used right now? Like, you're just like me. You are just like me in this situation. The only difference here, though, is that MK is choosing to put that aside for the sake of, like, I guess the greater good, or like whatever, whereas Azure Lion is using that to fuel his revenge and his pride and whatever. And it makes me wonder, since the similarities, there's so many similarities there, it makes me wonder, will MK do that? Because at this point, MK is ride or die for his friends, right? He's ride or die for his friends, his family, everything. So it makes me wonder if we might have some of that in the future, and like maybe the next season, having MK go through that, especially as he's dealing with the Chaos Monkey and whatever, and maybe these not so positive thoughts in his head. Will he try to take revenge if somebody like tries to hurt him, or like whatever, needless revenge? I can totally see that, because honestly, we haven't really dealt with, we've dealt with the abuse of his powers, but they've always been in like a really silly way. Nothing that's ever been crazy or out there or like actively malicious. It would be interesting to see that part, especially as he is mirroring a lot of like Sun Wukong's like lessons and the things that Sun Wukong had to learn. And Sun Wukong used to be a little spiteful little bitch. So I could totally see maybe an episode or two where we deal with MK and like these kind of negative, overpowering negative feelings, not being too arrogant, maybe even dealing with some arrogance. Actually, that would be really interesting, but not being too arrogant, just like feeling like he needs to take revenge on maybe somebody that has slighted him, maybe like a villain of the week type deal, because he's never really done that so far. But I can totally see him falling down that path, just like Azure Lion did. Especially as we get to the whole being used and being a pawn in someone's game. This is like the biggest like comparison I have for these two, is that them two being used as a pawn in someone else's game. And I feel like MK feels that, because he feels like he's kind of losing control of his whole life. He wants to just vibe. Like I said, he just wants to vibe with his fucking friends, and he's forced to save the world over and over again. And we're getting to a point now where we're starting to see like shadow organizations, like what's going on there, and all this other kind of like behind the scenes goings on that like almost make it seem like MK is not in charge of his own life. I almost feel like it's going to be kind of one of those vibes where the hero goes, why am I saving the world right now? Why am I doing this? Like, what is my reason for doing this, even though just because I have this power, the whole great power comes great responsibility type thing. But it's like, why is it my responsibility? I feel like we might get some of that in season 5, especially as we deal with, chaos and order and all of this stuff. I feel like it is a great thing for him to go through. Sorry, my mic cut out there. But I was just saying that I think this would be a very good challenge for MK to go through as he starts to come to terms with the chaos monkey that is inside of him, and, goes through what is probably going to be a morality test of like, oh, what is good and evil? I feel like that's going to be tested, especially as he keeps defending Sun Wukong. Like, you can't defend him forever. Some of the stuff that he did was wrong, like just straight up. And so would you consider him completely evil because he's done wrong? Probably not. So would you consider the chaos monkey inside of you completely evil? Would you consider Azure Lion completely evil? Like, probably not. And so I feel like he's gonna have to go through a little bit of those trials and tribulations, especially as he deals with the chaos inside of him. And chaos, at least in my opinion, in literature and things like that, is usually a pretty neutral entity. It isn't chaotic neutral, as they call it. So yeah, that's how I think a little theory craft in there. I think that's what MK is going to have to go through in the next season. So that's all that I have. That's about it. I know that there is so much I probably missed about his characterizations and little things here and there. So if you guys see something, or if you have some type of comparison to like the other seasons, please let me know down in the comments. I love having conversations with you guys. Let's open it up. Let's get to theory crafting. I love it. I love it. Someone said that the next season is probably slated for December. That's a crazy turnaround. That is a crazy turnaround. But if true, I will be here. I will be here. Y'all already know that I will be right here watching it. I plan on reading like some type of abridged version of Journey to the West during the rest of the summer and probably into the winter until the next season comes out. So if you guys are interested in like based off of that reading doing like another theory video about this ahead of season 5 coming out, I would love to hear your thoughts. So let me know down in the comments below. You can reach me on all of my social medias: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, literally all of them. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next episode. Love and peace.